Every single week that goes by, it would appear as if the South African government is trying more and more to destroy their relationship with America, specifically with Donald Trump and Washington, D.C. more broadly. And I don't think it's an accident. I don't think it, or yeah, at least I don't even think it's on purpose. I think the problem is that we're sort of getting to the end game of the ANC. And the issue is the ANC never banked on Donald Trump coming back into office. The problem with the previous American leadership, basically from Barack Obama, prior to him, even George W. Bush, and even Joe Biden, they never put a lot of stock into South Africa's role in terrorism around the world, South Africa's role in Iran, South Africa's backing of groups like Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. So South Africa was basically allowed to operate with impunity without anyone ever really taking a look. And then Donald Trump got back into office. And this time around, Donald Trump wasn't just speaking. In 2018 already, Donald Trump spoke about the genocide that is happening in South Africa. But it was really in 2024 and then early 2025 when Donald Trump was inaugurated into the office that Trump really started tightening the screws, as it were, against the necks of South Africa and more specifically the ANC. Since then, just as an absolute avalanche of bad news has happened. First, there's the whole meeting that happened with Emma Powell and Andrew Whitfield, where Andrew Whitfield was fired and then Emma Powell was fired as well a couple of months later. Then you have AfriForum that went to America to meet with President Trump. And anyone who doesn't know the timeline will buy the ANC's bullshit about, oh, it's treason because they're the reason Trump is blaming us. But if you know the timeline, you know that Trump was already talking about the genocide in South Africa in 2024. 2018 was the first time he ever mentioned it. And the tariff discussion was already 20 years ago, where Trump started talking about tariffs, and Trump really started talking about tariffs in 2022 when he was saying South Africa is taking advantage of South Africa. And 2023, Washington, D.C., as in Democrats and Republicans, were already fed up with South Africa fence-sitting consistently throughout the wars in Russia, but also South Africa consistently taking the side of the murderous regime Hamas and the Palestinian innocents that cheered on October the 8th. But with all of that said, the ANC, sort of continuously got rid of everyone and anyone that dare oppose their positions within Washington, D.C. And more recently, even AfriForum, Solidarity, and all of the people that went to the United States to speak to members of the United States government have now been sort of begun investigations by the Hawks for treason. Right? So clearly the government has something it wants to hide. At least that's what it seems like. And today's story actually just highlights that so much more. Now, at the core of this is basically every single terrible newspaper in the country. So, great job by Biz News for actually revealing what the hell is going on here. But we're dealing with a man called Philip van Niekerk. And Philip van Niekerk is a former South African journalist turned Washington-based consultant. He has a firm called Caliber Africa. And through Caliber Africa, he is an advisor to the MTN Group, which is Africa's largest telecommunications operator, and also very, very sort of interlinked between MTN Dubai, who pays a lot of his sort of consultancy fees and all the rest of it. But then he also serves in a number of think tanks as a result of Caliber Africa and the work that they do from the think tank side of things. And this is actually where you'll start to see how the ANC is sort of getting rid of all of the people that could reveal the sort of dark shit that we may or may not be actually busy with here. But okay, so he was a journalist, still writes articles, just FYI, and he has written articles for the Daily Maverick. He has written articles for News 24, or City Press rather, owned by News 24, The Guardian, The New York Times. the Daily Maverick and News 24, beacons of honest news coverage, never actually did any sort of investigations into who is this man and can we actually trust him. But just look at some of the articles that he wrote. Donald Trump and the march to war in the Persian Gulf. This was in 2019. Not everyone in the Middle East is sad to see Trump go. This was the Premium Times, November 2020. Trump's Middle East legacy, chaos and conflict, 2020. Trump's Iran gamble risks global security, 2019. Israel's annexation push and America's abdication, 2020. Trump's blind spot, how Washington enabled Israeli extremism, 2020. America is a bad dream, Daily Maverick, 2017. Later from DC, the United States doubled down on the devil it knows. That's from 2024, also in the Daily Maverick. These pieces consistently frame U.S. action in the Middle East, particularly under President Trump, as reckless, destabilizing, and dangerous to the world. They're nowhere in the bylines is there a disclosure that Niekerk is a paid consultant to MTN, a company with billions invested in Iran in partnerships with the Iranian Ministry of Defense. A small thing, right? That you would think people should know about when they're going to be reading an article from someone that allegedly knows what they're talking about. Here's where things get even deeper and so much darker, and where we're going to get to the real meat and potatoes of how big the issues for South Africa may actually be in the very, very, very near term. According to a former MTN senior executive, Van Niekerk reports directly to MTN Group Chairman Mcebisi Jonas. One whistleblower said Jonas authorizes Van Niekerk's invoices to MTN. According to one Washington insider, Van Niekerk was instrumental in MTN Dubai's appointment of the Vogel Group as a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. And then here's where we're actually going to start. I'm building the pieces together. It'll start to become clear as we go. The same former MTN executive alleges that Van Niekerk's consulting relationship with MTN began when Cyril Ramaphosa, then chairman of MTN, introduced him to Futuma Ngleku, then chief executive of MTN. It was Ramaphosa and Ngleku who orchestrated the partnership between MTN and the Iranian Ministry of Defense in MTN Iran cell. Now, why is this super, super important? Mcebisi Jonas, you might recall, is the man that was now brought in by Ramaphosa as the special envoy for South Africa to the United States of America. Why, one might ask, because Mcebisi Jonas was denied access to America. His visa was denied, and the reason his visa was denied was because MTN is currently under investigation in the United States for their role with MTN Dubai and their ownership of the MTN Iran cell deal, right? So MTN is currently because MTN may actually have had knowledge of the 7th of October attack. MTN definitely stands accused of attributing to thousands of American soldiers as well as Jewish soldiers dying and helping the Iranian guard to kill these soldiers. So MTN is in big trouble. It's not just that, though, but if Mcebisi Jonas works for the government, he has immunity. He can't be touched. He's part of the South African government. And so Ramaphosa can protect his friend. But there's more to it than that. He is regularly seen attending think tank events and policy forums, inserting himself into discussions that shape US-Africa relations, sanctions policy, and telecom regulation. An MTN whistleblower alleges that Van Niekerk provided reportings and briefings to MTN on South African visitors and delegations to Washington, D.C. in 2025, including Flip-based Kali Kriel, Jaco Kleinhans, and Dr. Dirk Herman of Solidarity and AfriForum, international business leader Rob Hersov, and Emma Powell and Andrew Whitfield from the Democratic Alliance. They furthermore say that he actually gave all of this information to Mcebisi Jonas, who's now the special envoy to South Africa. And you'll remember shortly after that, Andrew Wilson is summarily fired. And then, in a weird turn of events, Emma Powell is contacted by the media with a copy of an investigative report from the Hawks saying that she is currently under investigation for treason. This is not how it's supposed to be done. But of course, shortly after this little bombshell drops, the DA gets rid of Emma Powell as well. Obviously, the DA doesn't want to have that on the record. They're doing so well in the GNU, and they may actually convince South Africans that they're the next party to beat. But the ANC knew this. You see, the ANC needed to get rid of anyone that may have special information about the dark dealings in the dark underworld that is going on. And then you will find out the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, the Hawks, commenced a treason investigation into the leaders of AfriForum and Solidarity when they returned from Washington, D.C. in March 2025. So most likely Van Niekerk gave all of the information to Mcebisi Jonas, who now, as the special envoy for America, or South African special envoy to America, he now has direct access to Cyril Ramaphosa. Everything he discusses and shares with Cyril Ramaphosa can be classified as national security, right? National interest. They don't have to be sort of exposed to the rest of the world. No one needs to know. But basically, they know everything that's going on the other side of the pond. So effectively, Van Niekerk at this point could be charged as a spy. And America could kill him if they so chose. Here you have from the Sowetan, by the way. This is a whistleblower from the Sowetan. This was the newspaper that contacted Powell, who had seen the report and objected to the way the newspaper and its owners colluded with the SSA to target Powell, revealed to NSN that the SSA report specifically referenced Powell and Whitfield's remarks at the Hudson Institute. The report became the basis for Ramaphosa to dismiss Whitfield from the Government of National Unity cabinet. The same report was leaked by a senior official in the presidency to the Sowetan to launch a media campaign against Emma Powell as a whistleblower on MTN and the ANC's collusion with Iran. So, ladies and gentlemen, the ANC is panicked. They don't want this relationship between them and Iran to become any more news than what it already is. And people like Whitfield, people like Emma Powell, that have information about this because they were there, they were briefed by the Americans about what the hell is going on in your country, what the hell is going on between MTN and Iran, and with Ramaphosa, who actually helped MTN get that deal with Iran because it happened under his watch. How deep does this rabbit hole go? And as you can see here, the ANC is trying to get rid of everyone with any sort of information on this. You look at Van Niekerk's own past and you realize this man doesn't have a lot of morals. He literally had a client and he just turned against him. I'm not going to go into the details of this, but the company reached out to him to help them get a certain deal. And he ultimately used that information that they gave him to just flip sides and go to someone who was willing to pay him a lot more. They do talk about the actual ethical and legal questions as a result of Van Niekerk here, and they said, disclosure, readers should have the ability to know whose commentary they're actually reading. Foreign registration. His Caliber Africa complied with the Foreign Agents Registration Act if its work constitutes influencing U.S. audiences or policymakers on behalf of MTN Dubai as a shareholder in MTN Iran cell. So did he actually do that? Editorial integrity. Are the outlets publishing Van Niekerk's work applying adequate disclosure rules? Governance. Does Jonas's oversight of Van Niekerk's work and invoices create a governance conflict at the heart of MTN? Compliance. Do Van Niekerk and Caliber Africa hold a license for private investigations as required by the laws of the District of Columbia? And then corporate espionage. Does Van Niekerk's reporting on South African delegations in Washington, D.C. find its way into SSA reports used to target whistleblowers? Ladies and gentlemen, there is something very, very dark happening in our country. And Philip Van Niekerk may be the face of it. But I bet you everything that the ANC and the leaders within the ANC, Ramaphosa most likely at the top of that list, they're the ones being protected here. There is a reason why the ANC is desperate to silence everyone and anyone who goes to the United States of America. There is a reason why the ANC is desperate to stop Donald Trump talking about South Africa, to stop the ire of the Americans on South Africa. they just want everything to go away, because I genuinely believe that South Africa had knowledge of what happened on October the 7th. I genuinely believe that South Africa is, at this point, at least the ANC, is involved in terrorism around the world. If not funding, then most definitely we have knowledge of it. At least that's my thinking, that's my opinion. I have no evidence or proof of it, but I'm fairly certain of it, because these are not the actions of an innocent person. These are the actions of someone that is guilty, that is desperately trying to hide their tracks. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. It's crazy, it's nuts, but that's South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you like what I do and you think more people should have access to honest and rational conversation, then please consider hitting the like button, hitting that subscribe button, smashing that bell, because it really does help. And then a massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons and the YouTube channel members. To become a patron or a YouTube channel member, just hit the link in the description down below, or just click the join button right below this video. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I shall see all of you in the next one. Peace.